Ethan Parker had always been the quiet type, the kind of person who observed more than he participated. He often wandered through his small college town with a thoughtful expression, notebook in hand, jotting down snippets of conversations or fragments of his daydreams. His life was orderly, predictable, and, in a way, comfortably dull. But beneath that calm exterior, a restless curiosity simmered, an urge to experience something out of the ordinary, to see life from a different perspective. It was a Friday afternoon when Liam Matthews, his closest friend since freshman year, texted him with an invitation that would unsettle that routine. "Hey, Ethan. Want to come over? My uncle's back in town, he's eager to meet you. Trust me, it'll be interesting." The message was casual, but the way Liam phrased it carried an unusual weight, a hint of something unsaid. Ethan hesitated for a moment, running through the possibilities in his head. He knew Liam's uncle was known in town for his charm and charisma, often leaving people captivated, sometimes unsettled. There was a thrill in the unknown, and against his better judgment, curiosity won. By the time Ethan arrived at Liam's house, the sun was low, casting long shadows over the manicured lawns of the neighborhood. Liam greeted him at the door with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You're just in time," he said, ushering Ethan inside. The house smelled faintly of sandalwood and polished wood, a subtle elegance that hinted at the life within. "Uncle Victor will be down in a minute," Liam said, leading Ethan to the living room. "You'll like him. He has a way of making people feel seen." There was a pause, an almost imperceptible hesitation in Liam's voice, but Ethan didn't notice. His attention was drawn to the faint hum of anticipation in the air, the feeling that something significant was about to happen. Victor Matthews arrived shortly after, descending the staircase with an effortless grace. Ethan noticed immediately how striking he was, tall, well-groomed, with eyes that seemed to catch and hold light in a way that was almost disarming. Victor extended his hand, and the moment their fingers touched, Ethan felt a curious mixture of nervousness and fascination. "Ethan, it's a pleasure to finally meet you," Victor said, his voice smooth, rich, carrying a warmth that was almost magnetic. "Liam has told me quite a bit about you." There was no flattery in the words, only a calm confidence that made Ethan both self-conscious and oddly reassured. They sat together in the living room, the conversation flowing easily at first, small talk about classes, hometowns, and interests. But Victor had a way of probing gently, asking questions that seemed casual but struck directly at Ethan's thoughts and insecurities. "What's been on your mind lately?" he asked, leaning forward slightly. "I can tell there's something you're wrestling with." Ethan blinked, caught off guard. No one had ever asked him that before, not with genuine curiosity. I guess I just feel like I'm in a rut," he admitted. "Like everyone else is moving forward, and I'm stuck." His voice was quieter than he intended, betraying a vulnerability he usually kept hidden. Victor nodded thoughtfully, eyes never leaving Ethan's. "Feeling stuck is different from being stagnant," he said softly. "Sometimes, you just need a different perspective to see the path you've been missing." There was an intensity in his gaze that made Ethan shift slightly in his seat. He wasn't used to being seen like this, and it was both exhilarating and unnerving. As the conversation continued, Victor shared stories from his own life, tales of risks taken, mistakes made, and lessons learned. Ethan found himself listening intently, drawn not just to the words but to the way Victor spoke, the subtle confidence that seemed to make the room itself lean in closer. There was a magnetism there, undeniable and disarming. At some point, the conversation veered toward the unexpected. Victor asked about Liam, about their friendship, and Ethan found himself speaking more freely than he had with anyone in years. "Liam and I have been friends for a long time," he said. "I trust him, but sometimes I feel like there's so much I don't say to anyone." Victor's expression softened, a knowing smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "That's the interesting thing about trust," Victor said. "It isn't always about who you talk to, but who listens, and understands." The word struck a chord in Ethan, stirring something he didn't fully recognize. He felt seen, understood in a way that was startling. The warmth in Victor's presence was something Ethan hadn't expected to encounter, and it made the air between them feel charged, almost fragile. "Liam, seemingly oblivious to the subtle tension, excused himself to take a call, leaving Ethan and Victor alone in the living room. The quiet that followed was heavy, but not uncomfortable. Victor leaned back, studying Ethan with a calm intensity. "Sometimes," he said, "the moments that change us are the ones we don't see coming. You never know which encounters will leave a mark on your life." Ethan nodded, a mixture of curiosity and apprehension rising in him. There was something about Victor, his confidence, his attention, his ability to make Ethan feel both small and significant, that made the afternoon feel suspended in time. For the first time, he sensed that stepping into the unknown might not just be thrilling, but transformative. As the sky outside deepened into twilight, Victor stood, stretching casually. "Ethan, I'd like to show you something," he said, his tone light but with an edge of intrigue. "It's just a little project I've been working on at home. It's unusual, but I think you might appreciate it." Ethan hesitated, a flicker of doubt crossing his mind. Liam's warning echoed faintly, a shadow in the back of his thoughts, but the pull of curiosity was stronger. He nodded slowly. "All right," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Victor smiled, a faint, knowing curve of his lips. "Good. Let's go, then." As they moved deeper into the house, the sense of anticipation wrapped around Ethan like a tangible thread, tugging him forward into a world he didn't yet understand. Something had shifted, subtly, irrevocably. And for Ethan, nothing would ever feel entirely the same again. The days following Ethan's visit to Victor's house were strange, heavy with a quiet tension he couldn't shake. His routines felt altered, even mundane things, a walk to class, a conversation with a classmate, the hum of his morning coffee, carried a subtle weight. Every time he thought of Victor, a mix of curiosity, admiration, and guilt surged through him, leaving him restless. He found himself replaying their conversations in his mind, analyzing every word, every glance, every small gesture. One evening, Liam texted him casually, unaware of the internal storm raging within his friend. "Hey, want to come over tomorrow? Uncle Victor said he's got something new to show you." Ethan stared at the screen, heart pounding. The invitation thrilled him and terrified him in equal measure. He knew that returning would deepen the connection he already felt, but he also knew that his loyalty to Liam and the boundaries of friendship were at stake. After a long pause, he typed back a simple, hesitant, "Sure." The next day, Ethan found himself walking toward the Matthews house, each step heavier than the last. The sun was higher in the sky now, casting sharp shadows across the familiar street, but his mind was elsewhere. What would happen today? What if this connection with Victor crossed lines he wasn't ready to navigate? And yet, he couldn't deny the pull, the magnetic curiosity that had drawn him in before. Victor greeted him with his usual calm confidence, a subtle smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "I'm glad you came," he said. "I have something I'd like to share with you, something I think you'll find enlightening." There was a pause, a deliberate emphasis that made Ethan's chest tighten. The way Victor looked at him was not just attentive but probing, as if reading the thoughts he didn't dare voice aloud. They settled into the study, surrounded by books and sketches, and Victor began sharing ideas, theories, and personal reflections. Ethan listened intently, captivated, but also wary. He felt the emotional tension growing, the unspoken connection between them deepening with every shared thought. It was intoxicating, a mixture of admiration and desire for understanding, and he knew that the line he was crossing was not one of physicality but of emotional intimacy. As the afternoon wore on, Victor leaned back in his chair, his gaze fixed on Ethan. "You're perceptive," he said quietly. "You notice things most people overlook. But there's more inside you than even you realize. You just need the courage to face it." Ethan felt his heart quicken. Victor's words were flattering, but there was an undercurrent, something that hinted at a challenge, a subtle test of his resolve. Ethan found himself speaking more freely than ever before. He shared fears he had never admitted to anyone, the anxiety of being unnoticed, the yearning for approval, the craving for something beyond the predictable routine of his life. Victor listened patiently, his responses carefully measured, never judgmental, always encouraging. And the more Ethan spoke, the more he felt the fragile bond between them strengthen, but the bond came with a shadow. In quiet moments, Ethan's mind drifted to Liam. What would his friend think if he knew how deeply he was confiding in Victor? The thought brought a pang of guilt, a reminder that his curiosity and admiration were treading into morally ambiguous territory. He recognized the signs of emotional infidelity, the shift of loyalty, the clandestine admiration, the quiet exhilaration of being seen in a way that no one else understood. That it was during one of those reflective pauses that Victor spoke again, softer this time. Ethan, sometimes we meet people who challenge our understanding of ourselves. It's natural to feel conflicted about it. What matters is how we respond to that feeling. Ethan looked up, catching the earnestness in Victor's eyes. He felt the pull of trust, the magnetic draw of emotional connection, but also the weight of responsibility pressing on his chest. Later, Liam returned home, unaware of the internal tension between his uncle and friend. Ethan greeted him with a smile, careful to keep his emotions in check, to maintain the facade of casual friendship. Liam chattered about his day, oblivious to the quiet storm swirling in Ethan's mind. And yet, every glance Victor cast in Ethan's direction seemed to linger a fraction too long, a subtle reminder of the emotional entanglement that had quietly taken root. As the evening drew on, Victor stood and gestured toward the hallway. "Ethan, before you leave, there's something important I want to show you." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He followed him, anticipation and apprehension mixing in equal measure. In the dim light of the corridor, Victor paused, turning to face him fully. "You have a remarkable mind," Victor said, his voice steady, deliberate. "And I've enjoyed seeing it unfold. But I need you to understand something: admiration, curiosity, and emotional connection are powerful. They can illuminate our lives, or they can lead us astray if we're not mindful." Ethan swallowed hard, realizing the weight of Victor's words. It was a warning, yes, but also an acknowledgement of the bond that had formed between them. He felt a mixture of gratitude and fear. The connection he had with Victor had opened a door inside himself he hadn't known existed, but it was also a door that, once opened, could change everything. Victor's gaze softened, and he offered a small, almost imperceptible smile. "You have a choice, Ethan. What you do with what you feel, what you think, and how you act, it will shape not just your life, but the lives of those around you. Be mindful. Be brave. And above all, be honest with yourself." Ethan nodded, words failing him, but the message resonated deeply. He felt the gravity of the moment settle into his chest. There was a lesson here, a test of character, and he understood that the experiences he had shared with Victor were not just fleeting encounters, they were mirrors reflecting his own potential, his own fears, and his own moral compass. When he finally left the Matthews house that night, the street seemed both familiar and strange, as if he had crossed an invisible threshold. The pull of curiosity and emotional intensity lingered, but so did the awareness of boundaries, of loyalty, of the consequences of choices made in the heart and mind. Ethan walked home slowly, reflecting on the days that had passed, the conversations, the subtle gestures, the emotional resonance. He realized that Victor had challenged him not just to think, but to feel deeply, to confront emotions he had long suppressed. And while the path forward remained uncertain, one thing was clear: he had been changed, irrevocably, by the encounter. In the quiet of his room that night, Ethan sat by the window, staring at the city lights and thinking about the lessons learned. Emotional bonds, he understood now, were just as powerful as any other connection. And the choices he made, the way he navigated loyalty, curiosity, and admiration, would define not just his relationships, but who he would become. As sleep finally claimed him, a faint smile touched his lips, not of certainty, but of understanding. Life had shifted in subtle, profound ways, and Ethan Parker knew that the journey he had begun was only just beginning. The unknown lay ahead, charged with possibility, suspense, and the quiet thrill of discovery. Ethan Parker spent the next morning in quiet reflection. The city outside his window moved with its usual rhythm, indifferent to the turmoil brewing in his chest. Julian's subtle confessions, the lingering glances, and the unspoken tension had left him caught between clarity and confusion. He realized that avoiding the conversation would only deepen the complexity of their bond, and yet, the thought of confronting it made him feel vulnerable in ways he wasn't accustomed to. By mid-afternoon, Ethan decided that he could no longer remain passive. He called Julian, inviting him to their favorite coffee shop, a neutral space where they had spent countless hours laughing and talking over the years. Julian arrived promptly, his familiar grin softened by a hint of nervousness. There was a pause as they ordered drinks, a moment heavy with the weight of all that had passed unspoken. "Ethan," Julian began, his voice carefully measured, "I need to say something. I can't pretend anymore." Ethan nodded, bracing himself. "I know," he said quietly, surprising himself with the calm in his tone. Julian leaned forward slightly, hands wrapped around his coffee cup. "I care about you. More than I should. And I've been trying to manage it, trying to stay within the boundaries of friendship. But it's getting harder, and I don't want to hurt you, or lose what we have." Ethan listened, his mind racing. He had anticipated the confession, yet hearing the words aloud carried a weight that no amount of preparation could match. He felt the pull of their history, the warmth of their friendship, and the undeniable intensity of Julian's feelings pressing in all at once. "Julian," Ethan began, pausing to choose his words carefully, "I've felt it too. The tension, the closeness, it's confusing. But I don't want to risk what we've built either." Julian's expression softened, a mixture of relief and apprehension crossing his face. "I'm not asking for answers right now. I just wanted to be honest." Ethan exhaled, the first real breath he had taken in days. Honesty had changed the dynamic, illuminating the path forward even if it was uncertain. "Thank you," he said. "I think, we need time to figure out what this means." Over the following days, Ethan reflected on his feelings, evaluating the complexities of desire, loyalty, and self-awareness. He realized that his bond with Julian was unique, a foundation built on years of trust and shared experiences. That bond couldn't be dismissed, nor could it be forced into a conventional romantic mold without careful thought. Sophie Caldwell remained a presence in his life, her warmth and laughter a reminder of the simplicity and clarity of mutual attraction. Ethan recognized that part of his emotional turbulence stemmed from comparing Julian's intensity with Sophie's open affection. He valued both, but in different ways, and he knew that clarity required honest reflection. A week later, Ethan invited Julian for a walk along the riverfront, the site of many past conversations and quiet revelations. The city lights shimmered across the water, casting reflections that seemed almost symbolic of their own intertwined emotions. "Ethan," Julian said softly, breaking the comfortable silence, "have you thought about what you want?" Ethan glanced at him, a mixture of resolve and hesitation in his eyes. "I have. And I think what I want is, to be honest with myself, first. And then with you. I don't want to lose what we have, Julian. But I also can't ignore the feelings that have been building between us." Julian nodded, a small, almost imperceptible smile forming. "I understand. I can wait. I just needed you to know how I feel." Ethan felt a weight lift, replaced by a clarity that had eluded him for weeks. He didn't have all the answers, and the path ahead remained uncertain, but acknowledging the truth had given him a sense of control over his own emotions. The tension between them had shifted from a quiet, oppressive uncertainty to a mutual understanding, a foundation upon which they could navigate the delicate balance of friendship and desire. In the following weeks, Ethan approached his interactions with Julian and Sophie with newfound self-awareness. He allowed himself to enjoy moments with Sophie without guilt, recognizing the difference between romantic affection and the deeper, more complex bond he shared with Julian. At the same time, his connection with Julian grew more transparent, honest, and emotionally intimate, the silent tension replaced by understanding and patient consideration. One evening, as Ethan and Julian sat in Ethan's apartment, sharing a quiet cup of tea, Julian reached over and lightly tapped Ethan's hand. "I'm glad we talked," Julian said. "I feel lighter, somehow." Ethan smiled, a quiet warmth spreading through him. "Me too. It's strange, isn't it? How much we carry without speaking." Julian's eyes met his, a depth of emotion reflected in the gaze. There was no pressure, no expectation, just honesty. Ethan realized that this moment, simple as it seemed, represented a turning point. They could navigate their feelings with care, preserving the friendship while exploring the subtle undercurrents that had always existed between them. In the weeks that followed, Ethan continued to explore his own emotions, journaling, reflecting, and allowing himself to experience life without forcing clarity too soon. Julian remained a constant presence, offering support, laughter, and companionship, never rushing, never demanding. The bond they shared evolved into something resilient, a relationship that defied labels but thrived on honesty, trust, and emotional intimacy, and though the city continued its relentless pace outside the window, Ethan felt a quiet sense of resolution. He had confronted the tension that had clouded his life, faced the complexities of desire and loyalty, and emerged with a clearer understanding of himself and his friendships. Ethan knew the future remained unwritten. The questions of love, attraction, and connection would continue to unfold, unpredictable and nuanced. But for the first time in weeks, he felt steady, grounded in the knowledge that truth, spoken and acknowledged, could transform uncertainty into clarity. As the night deepened and the city lights reflected on the glassy surface of the river, Ethan allowed himself to smile, quietly, to the rhythm of a friendship and desire that had survived the test of honesty. Whatever came next, he was ready to face it with clarity, patience, and the courage to embrace the complexities of the heart.